XRP bullish news. Could we be here or here? In any case, this would mean that a big breakout could be imminent here. Donald Trump directly on the first day says, yeah, all right, Bitcoin reserves, they're done. Big XRP pump, the 20th. January, is that really the case? So, Moonboy sentiment is definitely already present in the entire crypto space. But is that really realistic? What will happen when Donald Trump is in power? That's what we're talking about today regarding RP, the entire crypto space, and also about a narrative that I have for you at the very end that Donald Trump could potentially push. Stay tuned. We'll see each other after. Before we dive in, I've seen a lot of people watching the videos. They haven't subscribed yet. So if you count yourself among them, feel free to leave a subscription and of course activate the bell. That's a full subscription, so you won't miss any important news. However, I just want to take a moment to give a big thank you to all of you out there. It's crazy how many views come in per day. How many new subscriptions have started just since yesterday? And as we can see in the comments, super. We can discuss. So, if you like the video, feel free to leave a like. Should boost the algorithm. And now we're diving in. Dude, Daniel, why are you showing Bitcoin now? We want to talk about bull. Yes. It may be hard for some XRP fans, but Bitcoin is and will always be the leading currency. And that in turn means that XRP reacts to it. What's going on with Bitcoin right now? So, get into it. Anyone who's paying attention right now, I've already prepared something here. Because, especially in trading, if we take a look at the chart patterns, we see bull traps. So, this is the phenomenon of, oh, there's a pullback in the market and everyone panics and thinks that's it. And then it suddenly goes up again. And if we take a look at, let's take the forecast from the past. I don't want to say anything like that here. Because it was like that in the past, it will happen again. However, if you look at it this way, we could either be here or here. In any case, this would mean that a big breakout could be imminent here, if everything was as it should. How it happened in the past is, but as I said, that's not a guarantee. Now let's move on to the second leading currency. Yes, Ripple fans, you have to stay strong. And it's about Ethereum because, of course, when we look at the altcoins, Ethereum isn't that far off. And anyone who thinks and says, yes, but now everything is different. Because out there's Solana and Cardano and so on. Yes, but one must still note, anyone who's also in the AI sector is currently out there. I also talked about that yesterday, about the narrative. If you haven't seen the video yet, feel free to click in here. In any case, when you look at the whole thing, runs on Ethereum, still the majority. So, what have I drawn here now? Historically speaking, Ethereum has always performed a bit later. There's a mix of about 10 to 12 days included. And if you look at this again, we would have been about here at the breakout. Because then it shot up steeply. Because if we move a bit further over here, we can see the previous all-time high that was broken. So, now let's take a look a bit further, and we have the current all-time high. By the way, in case someone wants to put me on the spot here, I've marked it nicely on TradingView. CoinMarketCap does say a different all-time high, but as I said, to me it looks like an all-time high, but whatever, it's definitely much higher than where we are right now, which would tendentially mean that there's still a bit of room to grow until we really see such a massive breakout here, which would then lead to an altcoin season. As I said, just looking at it historically from the past. But in the past, of course, everything is different because there wasn't Donald Trump as the crypto president. And on the other hand, there weren't the discussions about the Bitcoin reserves. Yes, now some fans out there really need to be strong because I find it 5,000% likely that Donald Trump quickly comes to power here. And right on the first day, he says, yeah, all right, Bitcoin reserves, they're done. In Germany, we know all about election promises. Shout out to the traffic light. At this point, one must say, What is fiction and what is reality? And that remains to be seen. Because if we take a look at the whole thing here, sure, the Bitcoin reserves as such could trigger a domino effect. And there are definitely supporters of that. That's the senator who set the whole thing up. Trump hasn't really commented on it himself yet. However, if the USA now says we're introducing Bitcoin reserves, well, what will the rest of the world do then? And then there's also BRICS involved who are also considering it Bitcoin, or rather, to include the leading currency. No one knows yet. However, we've already heard about it in Germany as well. From the FDP, that then suddenly also starts and says, hey, we also want to be part of this. Having Bitcoin reserves. And so, of course, China and Japan and so on could all get involved in this. Especially since we don't know where it is now. What all these countries are currently holding in terms of Bitcoins. Or what they might be secretly buying up. Because they might be waiting exactly for that and say, well, hold on a second, we definitely don't want to miss that train. At this point, I want to bring you back to reality. Because there are a lot of experts out there, especially on YouTube. These are all self-proclaimed prophets who know everything. But unfortunately, no one really knows anything right now. Because you see an example here. Yeah, the USA will probably buy more than 100,000 Bitcoin. And by 2025, we're already talking about between 300,000 and 400,000 buying Bitcoin. And 2025, we're already talking about between 300,000 and 400,000, which is somehow more than 100,000, but okay. This was, for example, mentioned by this gentleman. Now let's move on to the next article, which is titled, yeah, according to crypto experts, the US government won't be buying anything at all in 2025. So it's more about holding the Bitcoins that the US government is currently holding. Unlike Germany, they all sold everything at a huge loss in hindsight, but that's that. We can manage that pretty well in the budget. But definitely, when you look at that, it's about that. So new purchases are unlikely. It's more about holding. So let's take a look at the next gentleman. And for those who remember, last interest rate decision on the 18th, December. That's when dear Jerome laid a little egg and made it very clear. So, on one hand, Bitcoin, from a regulatory perspective, are not allowed to hold any Bitcoin reserves at all, nor would they make any effort in that direction. Oh, that's what comes next. Oh! Yeah, some people might not be aware of that at this point. Donald Trump, sure, pretty narcissistic, but still didn't declare a dictatorship in the USA. That means there are still a lot of other people who are involved in the decision-making, and a lot of other people who are involved in the decision-making usually means that it requires a certain time frame. And that raises the big question. He promised a lot there, but how much of that can he actually deliver in the end? Because that's also the expert opinion, which I agree with. Trump could fulfill all his campaign promises. However, he definitely needs support from a legislative or regulatory perspective. And that's something you shouldn't forget. So, right now, it feels like it's out there. Moonboy mood. Everyone is going crazy in January, and everything is going to go through the roof. But let's try to stay a bit realistic here. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and take a look at XRP. Because there are indeed some bullish news. So, we can definitely leave it at that. But before we get to that, here's a little reason why it could be quite realistic. That we might even see a pullback at the time of taking office in the market. And here you see the heat map. I recently talked about that. The market makers are really making a killing right now. If you haven't seen the video yet, feel free to click here. Anyway, what am I getting at? We had a nice pump up yesterday evening. This could have consequences. Combined with the moonboy mood, there are a lot of over-leveraged long positions that have been created. Well, it is what it is. Now, everyone is, of course, looking forward to the 20th, January, and says it can only go in one direction. So, long, with a lot of X's. Well, good. Now, let's take a look at the whole thing. And that be a bit more likely from a higher perspective. There's still quite a bit of liquidity there. So, if we compare that. And now the market makers could definitely be clever and go below this threshold again. Because what will happen then? When we are in this area, there's a lot of liquidation at play. And that definitely tastes pretty to the market makers. That's why I can always just give you the tip. Take a look at the whole thing from a bit of a bird's eye view. So now hopefully you can see it better. Take a look at the whole thing from a bird's eye view and consider what could happen here and how realistic it all is. Are we just going straight to the moon now? Or if there are still a few market makers in the game, just want to make a lot of money. A few million billion. So, yeah, I can kind of understand it. That they act the way they do. But now let's move on directly to Ripple. You were waiting for that too. So, Brad Garlinghouse or Ripple, they are definitely pretty bullish. Because that's where all the open positions are supposed to be. So, we're talking about 75% of all open positions should be based in the USA. So here too you can tell, yes, they obviously want to strengthen their own country. Because a lot has been shifted abroad regarding Gary Gensler in the past. And done. Trump has now explained to Garlinghouse, yeah, we're going back to the USA. He also elaborated on that in this post. By the way, if you're not following me on X yet, I also drop a coin tip or two there from time to time. Or what's going on in the market economy right now. Feel free to follow me. So just look up Uptrend. Link is also down in the description. Then you can follow me there. Now I have a few news items for you. And this is really the key point that some people always discuss and say, yeah, Ripple releases 1 billion tokens per month. Access. They don't have to release the billion into the market, but they can. That's definitely a lot of inflation in the end because it feels like only about plus or minus 50% of the total supply is even on the market. In any case, it seems that 500 million have now been released. XRP has been released. The community is celebrating it. Well, in the end, it's still inflation, but it hasn't harmed the price. So, if you take a look at that, and the whole thing was sent out into the world with the message, hey, on the 20th January, that's when Donald Trump will move into the White House. And on the other side, we make crypto great again. Yeah, okay, we can leave it. That for now. At this point, what exactly is going to happen on the 20th? It happens. I'm afraid that the excitement is much greater than what actually happens in the end. But anyway, that's that. Definitely. Here, these other 500 million tokens were then held in trust. That's definitely a good sign, because this also creates a locking mechanism for these other tokens on the other side. So, plus or minus, as I said, in the end, it hasn't harmed the price so far. It hasn't harmed it. Now let's move on directly. What's going on with RLUSD anyway? At first, you don't really hear anything, but the trading volume in the short time that this thing has been active, that's really interesting. So I've made some comparisons here right off the bat without getting too carried away with the excitement. So even though Tether is crossed out here, it's still not that big of a deal. But let's be honest, Tether has also been on the market for a few more years. So we should also look at it this way and be realistic. Something has to grow first. But if we make a comparison, for example, with PayPal, which currently has a 24-hour market volume of 18 million, then you can say that this thing has already been surpassed. So we're already at almost 22 million, and that's definitely a strong symbol, because PayPal isn't exactly small either. If you compare it now with USDC or even with USDT, there's still quite a bit of room for improvement. There's room for improvement. But as I said, this isn't meant to be hate in that direction. Because it's strong. It's really strong. How quickly this stablecoin has established itself. And that, in turn, has positive effects. For XRP, you shouldn't forget that. Forget it. And now, to wrap up, just a quick note on one topic. And that is tokenization. Some people might not even have this on their radar yet, but if you've been following the news over the last few days, suddenly there's a lot more talk about tokenization. So where before it was just AI or Ripple and the like, suddenly BlackRock comes into play, because there are also speculations that they are working on their own blockchain. And especially Trump. That could really push the topic forward. And what I want to briefly talk about, because the German faction is also well positioned, there's a project, maybe you've heard of it, called Onino. And we're talking about a complete blockchain in the future, which is why there's also a dedicated token. Let me show you this one briefly first. It's definitely making an interesting move. How it will proceed from here, nobody knows. However, in terms of market cap, there's still room for growth. But I want to focus mainly on the use case. Come on, because everyone should be aware of tokenization. You have to look at it in the long term. So, no matter which projects we've talked about so far, that's a years-long process. What I personally find quite exciting about Onino is the fact that we are talking here about a future-owned blockchain. That means a complete infrastructure. In the end, when a project comes along and says, I have no idea, but I have a cool idea and I want to do something with tokenization, well, then welcome to Onino, because they can completely implement all these other areas. And here, what's also pretty strong, especially because of the project. It's definitely not that big yet. It's the whole team. I always find GetDoxed to be a very strong sign. You can also see what networks are behind it. You can check out the individual people on LinkedIn, and I always find that incredibly important, where you can really see it. Okay, there's really trust behind it. They believe in it. And now I want to quickly show you this again. What the actual product is behind it. So it's basically a complete, let's call it in quotation marks, building block. That's not quite right. But if you have an idea as a project, then you can approach this team. And you can say, okay, now we're bringing the whole thing onto the blockchain. Yes. And for those who take a look at the other major chains, I want to do that now. Don't go off on tangents about the potential behind it. But just take a look at SUI, for example, which is also making progress with corresponding collaborations. Interestingly, I talked about this yesterday. Regarding the topic of tokenization, making progress there can be quite exciting. So, of course, a lot of marketing is needed and many projects will run on it. But that's really exciting. So, I can just give you the tip to check it out. I just put the link in the description. As I said, obviously no financial advice, nothing like that. This could happen in some way. But the use case that's presented here, I find that interesting. I personally find it quite exciting. Yes, and now I'm really curious about you. So, are you a fan of it? Are you saying there's going to be a big pump on the 20th January? Or do we have to wait a little longer? How long do we have to wait? How long have you been in XRP? Invested. So, I'm really curious about that. Even if there are critical opinions against XRP, let's discuss that as well. Just write it in the comments. Otherwise, if you like the video, feel free to give it a like. And please forgive me for first pulling up the Bitcoin history before we get to Ripple. But you should always look at the bigger picture. By the way, if I should dive deeper into that, feel free to write it in the comments. In conclusion, I can only give you this tip. Check out this video, My Mistakes from 2024. More relevant than ever. I can already reveal this much. Because the market is currently at a turning point, I would check it out. So, we'll see each other in the next video. Until then, all the best. Bye.